I was walking down the street on a sunny day. Hubba, 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 hubba. A feeling in my bones says I have my way. Hubba, 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 hubba. Oh, I'm a happy boy. I'm a happy boy. Oh, it is good when things are going your way. Hey, hey. My little dog Spot got hit by a car. Hubba, 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 hubba. Put his guts in a box and put him in a drawer. Hubba, 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 hubba. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, I'm a happy boy. Oh, ain't it good when things are going your way? Hey, hey.
From Kenner's Star Wars collection comes the Stormtrooper, the Sand People, and all 20 action figures, including new Hammerhead, Snaggletooth, and more, each sold separately. And now, Boba Fett, Star Wars villain with his laser rifle. Boba Fett is not yet available in stores, but you can get him free with 4 proofs of purchase from any Star Wars action figures. Details on specially marked packs at participating stores. Offer ends May 31st. Star Wars action figures sold separately from Kenner.
Aimless Adventure Crew, I'm Murph, and welcome to another episode of Murph's Vault. Last year I did a video about Mattel's Battlestar Galactica line. Specifically, I talked about the ship vehicles that they had made and the dangers of these little red missiles and how they shot out and how it led to an unfortunate death of a child who choked to death. As part of that video, I talked about the rocket-firing Boba Fett made by Kenner, or the prototype that was made by Kenner. Touched on it briefly. I thought I would go into a little bit more detail in this video here about it. Now, you old school Star Wars collectors, I'm sure you know this entire story. You can find it on the internet, but some of you may not know it. So I'll give you some of the details behind it. What I want you to do is go back to 1978, okay? Forget about what you know about Star Wars now. Forget about that property that Disney bought from George Lucas for $4 billion, okay, a few years ago. Back in 1978, Star Wars, I don't have to say much, we all know it became a cultural phenomenon overnight when the movie was released. No one saw it coming. Not 20th Century Fox, not George Lucas himself, and not even his licensees, one of which was Kenner Toys. Now, I had talked about in a previous video about the early bird kit and how Kenner Toys had done that to promote their Star Wars toy line, specifically the 3 3/4 inch action figure line. Now, it's 1978, coming up on 1979. Star Wars has been out since May of 1977, and people are talking about when is Star Wars 2 going to come out. All good movies have a sequel. I mean, there was Jaws, Jaws 2, so on. Friday the 13th Part 2, Halloween, Halloween 2. All good movies have a sequel. Well, when's Star Wars sequel going to come out? And then Kenner decided to do a mail-away offer. It was their first one. And not only was this for a character from Star Wars, but this was a character from the upcoming new movie, Star Wars, the sequel. And it was for a character named Boba Fett. Boba Fett, who was advertised as an intergalactic bounty hunter, who was an enemy of Han Solo and will be a major villain in the next Star Wars movie. And one of the big things was it was advertised as having a rocket-firing backpack. And it was in these advertisements here that appeared on the action figure cards of the day for the mail-away offer that we saw our first image of Boba Fett. This first image was known as the Kit Bashed Boba Fett. It's called a Kit Bash Boba Fett because it was a prototype made for photo samples from parts of existing figures. And this Kit Bash Boba Fett was not only used on the advertisement on the card for the mail-away offer, it was even used in some product photographs as well, such as the action figure case that was released. Anyway, the Kit Bash Boba Fett parts of it has been identified by collectors over the years. They used the torso from C-3PO, they used the legs from the Death Squad commander, and they used the arms from the Stormtrooper. The rest of the parts were made up of putty and were sculpted, like the head, the chest piece over C-3PO's torso, some of the details on the arms. The launching rocket-firing backpack was actually a launcher from a Mattel Shogun Warrior figure. It wasn't even a Kenner toy it was from. Anyway, so this was just used for mock-ups. Now, I'm going to come back to the Kit Bashed Boba Fett later. But anyway, as we know, Kenner then tried various different launching mechanisms for their rocket-firing Boba Fett. They had already advertised it was going to be coming out. People were sending in proofs of purchase, expecting their free figure. And then, of course, Mattel's trouble came along with the Battlestar Galactica line. The original launcher was called the L-shaped launcher. This mechanism worked very well. Unfortunately, it could fire accidentally very easily, which could cause the missile to go into a child's eye or in their throat and causing a choking hazard. So in order to prevent the missile from firing accidentally, they created the J hook or the J slot firing mechanism. Unfortunately, there was a lot of stress put on this little plastic piece that the trigger went around, causing it to break quite often, which would create a little plastic splinter that could get at a child's eye or so on. They couldn't come up with a firing mechanism at that time with the toy making technology they had to actually have a safe rocket firing Boba Fett. Hence, we got in the mail a Boba Fett with the rocket firing mechanism removed and the missile glued in. That's what we all received. Nobody received in the mail a rocket firing Boba Fett. If you were around back then as a kid and you heard stories about a friend who had a friend that received one, they're all bullshit. Okay, no one received one in the mail. The only rocket firing Boba Fetts that are out there are prototypes that were in the hands of Kenner employees back at that time. Now, this, of course, with the popularity of Boba Fett, the urban legend about the rocket firing Boba Fett has created a toy collector phenomenon. Now, I don't consider the rocket firing Boba Fett to be an actual toy. Okay, this was a prototype back in the day. It was never sold in stores, never mass produced for the public. So I don't consider it a toy, I consider it a prototype. And there are people that collect prototypes. However, for me, it's nothing I really sought after. I have some reproductions that I've shown you in some pictures here, but that's enough for me. There's probably been around 24 of these prototypes, I believe, that have been discovered over the years. Some are painted, some are not painted. Some have a working launching mechanism, some do not. The mechanism is broken because they broke during testing. Some have the missile present, some don't have the missile present. Etc. One prototype that has never shown up over the years is the earlier one that I had mentioned, the very first one, which is called the Kit Bashed Boba Fett. The Kit Bashed Boba Fett has never appeared over the years. It's believed after a few promotional photos were taken, it was probably thrown away because Kenner had plans to eventually do a brand new sculpt for Boba Fett, which is unfortunate because it's a piece of toy history. It was the first Boba Fett figure ever made. Now, over the years, there have been some fans that have attempted to recreate this figure, which varying degrees of success. Some have looked like it to one degree or another, some not. In late 2016, there was a fan-produced Kit Bash Boba Fett. This one was probably the best that I have seen to date. It arrived in a mailer box. Inside was the figure, along with the rangefinder, a little tube of white glue to glue the rangefinder in, a stand, a gun, and also came with like this little metal star tot thing, whatever. I don't know what those are. I guess star tots are some kind of Star Wars thing that people collect. Anyway, so, and I have to say, it was probably the best version of the Kit Bash Boba Fett that has been made to date. However, it is fan-made. It came with 2 missiles also. It came with the pointed missile that's seen in some promotional photography, and it also came with another missile that had a rounded head for safety reasons as well. This figure does launch the missile, has the button there, and it works. It has all the points of articulation that an original Star Wars figure had. But this figure I really like. It's probably one of my favorite figures now because as a child, I always wondered what happened to that first Boba Fett figure that I remember seeing on the packaging and didn't receive in the mail. Now, to end this video, Kenner, well, Hasbro, I should say, because Kenner Toys was eventually purchased by Hasbro. Hasbro finally made good on Kenner's promise 30 years later. In 2010, they did finally release the rocket-firing Boba Fett, the original figure. It was a mail-away offer, once again, never sold in stores. It arrived in a white mailer box, and it was on a reproduction of the original card. It's the original Boba Fett figure, a little bit bigger than what was made back in the day, but not by much. That's noticeable. And it does have a rocket-firing figure. On the back here gives right there gives a history of the figure itself. Here's a picture of the original Boba Fett on the card. And this is a pretty cool figure. It took them 30 years to finally do it, but they finally gave us our rocket-firing Boba Fett. If you're interested in this figure, I have seen it, just to warn you, that mail away going on eBay, about $75 to even over $100. So it is sought after as a collector piece right now for toy collectors. But it is out there. Once again, Kenner did eventually release it in 2010, 30 years after Kenner's promise. Anyway, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Join me again while I have another video from a toy from my toy vault. Thank you very much. And now I let you go back to your aimless adventure. Later.